Hello, everybody. Namaste. Welcome to today's Mystery School teaching. And today we're going all into unity consciousness. So, when I was connecting with Oath's energy, he referred to this as the emerald pathway, the unification of all. Unity consciousness awakened is our tagline and the energy that we're working with today. So, we're going to jump right into it. Alrighty. So, the law of divine inversion, the Ouroboros of creation. To understand unity, we must first explore the paradox of separation. The one fragmented into the many so that it could know itself. The cosmos is an ever-expanding mirror of the divine, each soul a shard of the eternal, reflecting different aspects of source. Yet the return path is not linear, it is an inversion. And I'll get into that, right? Because it's not quite literal in the sense of inversion that we have. So the deeper we venture into material complexity, the closer we come to realizing that there was never a split at all. So, like an Ouroboros swallowing its own tail, what appears as the furthest reaches of individuation and separation are actually the threshold of absolute union. Our next initiation is to pierce the veil of separation and dissolve the illusion of externalization, to look upon another and see self, to gaze upon the stars and know them as our own consciousness unfolding. And so, to get deeper into what I mean by the return path is not linear. So, we have sometimes very linear ways of perceiving what is non-linear, what is inherently and naturally non-linear. Because obviously we experience time as linear and all of these different things, we experience them as linear or perceive them to be linear because we are perceiving them with a linear and three-dimensional mind, right? Unless we're raising the frequency of that into the higher dimensions. And so we often tend to see ascension or returning to God's source or becoming closer to God's source, whatever your goal or intention might be, as linear, right? We see first dimension down here, 12th dimension up here of the physical matrix, and we're just like boop, 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 boop. Oh, I'm rising. I'm rising to the fourth and the fifth and the sixth dimension. And one of the concepts that we're getting into today, and it's not that you can't rise in frequency in that way, but we want to understand why Earth is such a profound school for the soul. Because a lot of us, as we get further into our spiritual journey, we start to remember or realize, hey, I was a higher dimensional soul. I came from the Pleiades, or I came from here or there, and I was a sixth dimensional soul, and those are seventh dimensional beings, and so on and so forth, right? And so it's like, why, if I was already sixth dimensional, right, why would I come back down to the third dimension? And that's because we're operating from that linear mindset where a lot of us misperceive the profound possibilities of being on Earth, right? Like a lot of us can just feel victimized by our experiences on Earth and feel like we are just eager to escape it or eager to rise back up into the higher dimensions, to leave this density behind, so on and so forth. A lot of us feel like we came here just for others and not also for ourselves. And there's a whole mix of in-betweens in that regard, right? So, why would we come back down to physical reality, the third dimension, dense reality? Why would we do that? Especially if we were already these higher dimensional souls. And that's the idea of inversion. And so it's not inversion in a literal sense where it's like we have to go down through the dimensions to get back to source at the bottom, right? But actually, we're looking at more of the Ouroboros or the circle. That's why sacred geometry is so profound as well. When we're starting to open our minds into multidimensional and non-linear perspectives. So let's say this head is God's source consciousness, right? And as we are getting further away from God's source consciousness, we're getting this is unity consciousness. We're getting further away into individuation, separation, individual experience. And we keep getting further and further and further. We end up back at source. And so that's this idea is that the deeper we journey into material complexity, into separation and the illusion of it, the closer we can find ourselves to source. And I mean, we're going to get into it, but this is a big topic. So, is anything ever not a big topic? But this is why we come to the third dimension and why we choose such a difficult school because it is such a profound masterclass of recognizing divinity, of recognizing source. A lot of people come to Earth for a culmination lifetime before returning to source. Culmination meaning their last incarnation before ascending, before rising much higher. And that is because, not just because, oh, I'm an amazing soul and I'm going to come to earth and do great deeds and my karma are going to be so great. I'm going to ascend. Maybe that's part of it, right? But it's remembering and taking back the power of remembering why we came here. And that's like all of these mystery school teachings is taking back the power of the memory of why we're here and why we're doing these things. Why are we meditating? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? So this is the power of saying, the deeper I go, the more that I see, the more that I find. And we're not here to escape. We're here to see beyond the veil, essentially. All right, so let's continue. The harmonization of the three temples. So, one method of achieving unity consciousness or progressing in it, right? Because it's not usually a one and done kind of process, is achieved through the harmonization of the three sacred temples within. One, the temple of the mind, the solar king. So, and this is also, the divine masculine, so on and so forth. Temple of the mind, the solar key, the seat of perception, where thought weaves reality. Here, distortions must be untangled, for false beliefs act as veils between self and source. Two, the temple of the heart, the lunar chalice, the gateway to the divine pulse of existence. Here, emotions are alchemized, transmuting pain into love, grief into wisdom. The temple of the body, the earthly ark, the sacred vessel through which the infinite experiences finiteness. Here, through breath and movement, here breath and movement are tools of attunement, aligning form with formlessness. When these three temples are in harmony, the unified trinity emerges, a state where divine intelligence, unconditional love, and embodied action flow as one. In this state, your will is indistinguishable from the will of all, and manifestation becomes instantaneous. So this is big, right? So as you get like deeper into these teachings, you will hear more and more this idea about aligning your will with the will of God. And I've spoken about that in previous lessons, talking about if you are in alignment with the divine blueprint and the highest good of all, then your will is in alignment with the will of God, with the will of the all, as also known as in Hermetic teachings. So, aligning your energy with God's energy, aligning your intention with God's intention is the key to manifestation, instant creation, ascension, all of these things that we are seeking to become more of, remember more of, understand, know more of these topics in our spiritual awakening. All of the many reasons why we might go down this spiritual path, right? So, and this is another way of saying, body, mind, spirit, right? Of balancing these perceptions. And so, one thing that can be done, right? This is sort of like the blueprint, because a lot of this work is done on our own, right? You could take these tools and integrate them, and they don't have to become your day-to-day life or your daily practice in order for you to be rising and growing and progressing. But these are keys that you're being handed back so that you can progress in your own time. So, clearing the mind of distortions. So essentially with these three, clearing the mind, clearing the heart, clearing the body, clearing the mind, clearing the heart, clearing the body, we're going into meditation in our own time, in our own experiences, or just going into self-reflection and focusing on these three fields, these three temples. So, for example, you can travel to the temple of the mind in your meditation. So, what you would do is get yourself into a peaceful space, maybe put on some meditation music, and set the intention that you are traveling to the temple of the mind. Maybe I'll even release a meditation with this concept, but travel to the temple of the mind and allow yourself to see what is present, what you do and don't believe. You can ask yourself to, you could work with the solar key, the solar energy, ask the solar energy to reveal any veils, any distortions, any blockages, any shadows of your perception that are preventing you from seeing that you are source, essentially. Any distortions in your perception. And in the same way, you can go to the temple of the heart and you can imagine this beautiful lunar temple, right? Connect to the lunar energy, connect to the heart, the emotions, connect to pain and love and grief and wisdom, and ask this lunar energy to show you your heart, to show you your heart space, your heart energy, to show you pain, to show you where there is pain, where there is love, where there is grief, where that grief is transformed into wisdom, what it has taught you over the years, the ways in which you have grown, and work with those energies intuitively to see what needs to be done. And the last one is the temple of the body. Not the last one as if these are the only three in all of existence, but the sacred vessel through which infinite experiences the finite, right? Here, breath and movement are tools of attunement. So, breath work, intuitive movement, yoga, stretching, exercise, whatever it may be, qigong, whatever it may be, right? Um, Keeping the body pure, keeping the body high vibrational. We're seeing a lot of this in the world now, with all the conspiracies, but they're not even conspiracies anymore, of all the poison that's in the soil and in the air and in the water and in the food we drink and in everything. And just doing our best to clean up what we are consuming. And that includes what we are consuming as far as like TVs and movies and music, frequency, like the frequencies of others, the words of others, the presence of others. If there are people in our life who aren't serving our highest good or aiding us in our highest frequency, foods and beverages and things that we are physically consuming that are not serving our highest good or raising our frequency, experiences, choices, places, whatever it might be that we are experiencing and thus becoming and consuming, we want to clear that. We want to clear that so that our physical vessel and as well as the heart and the mind can be as clear as possible to achieve higher levels of awareness and vibration, right? And let me see, was there anything else I wanted to say? Yes, so when you, it's kind of like, so you have this idea, you're like, oh, I can align my will with the will of God. How do I do that? Where do I start? This is sort of like a where do I start sort of template, right? Where do I start with the mind, with the heart, with the body, with the energy? And when you start, because the truth is, at our very core, at our very truth, the very core essence of us, we are source. We are aligned with source. Our will is aligned with source. And when it ripples out from there through us, through our expression of self as our expression of our life, there can be distortions. Like, for example, innately we can have pure abundance. And yet, as it ripples out in the mind, we might have distortions of lack or limitation. In the heart, in the our heart of hearts, we will have that divine unconditional love, and yet external reflections could be showing quite the opposite because of distortions in our heart field, the temple of our heart. So, or the importance of physical health, and it's not a cookie cutter image of health, right? It's not you have to be this weight or this shape or, perfect skin or perfect hair or whatever it is, right? It's not about societal ideas of perfection. It's about getting yourself to a place where you feel clear and clean and happy and pure and light and all of these things. And if you have any illnesses or disease that you're experiencing, helping your body heal through that as well to get to a better place. And just that along the lines of that, right? And so then as we clear out these energy fields, because the vibration of our body also affects what how much of our highest self we're able to hold within us, within our the purity of our mind, um, and our physical mind determines how much of our higher mind that we can contain and embody, how much the purity of our physical heart, our heart space, affects the amount of our highest heart that we can embody. And the same with the body as a whole, the purity and the vibration of the body determines how much of our highest self we can embody in this lifetime. And the more of our highest self that we embody, the more the higher our frequency is, the higher our vibration. This is tied to Christ consciousness, being a complete vessel for your highest self is Christ consciousness. And that's complete unity with Source while incarnate. And these are kind of like the stepping stones for how we're working towards that. So, this is going even deeper into meditation and why we do it. So, the arcane practice, I think sometimes the names that come forth when I'm connecting with those to channel these energies are to emphasize the importance of them, that they're not just like nowadays we could just easily say, oh, yoga, I'm just doing some yoga. And then we're like, no, I'm working with the earthly arc, the temple of the body, the earthly arc. Or, oh, I'm just doing some meditation. It's like, no, it's an arcane practice, it's a mystery school, deep spiritual practice. It's not child's play, my dear. Making myself choke with my own jokes. All right. So the arcane practice, the reversal of sight. A mystery long hidden from the uninitiated. True sight does not look outward, it looks inward. When you close your eyes and see with the inner sun, the inner light of God, the inner light of Source, you perceive reality as it truly is. To practice this, you close your physical eyes and direct awareness to the eye behind them, your third eye. Sorry, I'm like choking on water. Breathe deeply, sinking into the space where perception arises. And once again, this is working with the temple of the body, the arc, the earthly arc. Breath work, breathing deeply, slow, deep breathing calms our nervous system, clears our energy field, connects us to ourselves, connects us to the moment and our presence. Sinking into the space where perception, inner perception arises. Ask yourself, who or what sees through these eyes? And who or what is it that watches? If the mind answers, go deeper, because this is where we start to get into um, if you are working on increasing your intuition or your psychic abilities that we all naturally inherently have, this is part of it, right? This is the practices that we go through that I've been through to awaken these gifts in myself. So, and you might already go past these. These are designed to be beginner friendly, but I know one of the earlier phases in spiritual awakening is often separating yourself from the mind, realizing that you are not your thoughts. You aren't even necessarily the thinker, right? Because the mind is the one who is often generating thoughts. You are the one who is witnessing the thoughts. You are the witness. So you're not the thoughts, you're not the thinker, you're the witness. And so you're not necessarily, if you already have that awareness, right? If I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my mind, I'm the witness. I am the soul that is experiencing this, that is present beyond and behind all of this. And so when you ask, who is it? What is it that watches? you're giving yourself the opportunity to tune into the energy of the watcher, the witness. And if the mind answers, like the mind might try to answer and be like, well, it's my soul, it's my higher self, she's just sitting in there. It's like, no, kind of like let yourself go beyond the initial thoughts that will pop up and try to explain or examine. And like they said, find the one who asked the question, right? Because if you are the one who's witnessing all of this, what is this spark, the origination of energy behind all of this? And so this practice unravels the core illusion of externalization, revealing that all is one because all arises from the same eternal source point. When mastered, this reversal of sight leads to the realization that you are both the dreamer and the dreamed and the dream, right? So, this is also, why in certain groups like Buddhist monks is one thing that always comes to mind for me is they will sit in meditations for hours and days and weeks and months. And it's just like a very intense practice to sit in meditation for that long. And it's not, and a lot of times it's not a meditation of, oh, I'm going here to meet my higher self, we're going to have a conversation, or I'm going to my inner child, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's less of an active meditation and more so sitting with silence. And that's where you start to see the mandala images, which is like one mandala I love, which is really beautiful. It's like a moment within the mind of God. I feel like I can show that. A moment within the mind of God. Oh, nope, just getting religious quotes. Let me see. Is this it? Well, I don't know if I can find the exact one. But essentially that's where these profound images come through. Is there another version of fractals, right? Alrighty, so that's what I think of as these people who will go into deep meditation, into deep stillness. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, into deep stillness to reconnect with source. Because one thing is that a lot of us will search up and out when we're on our spiritual awakening to find out who we are. Like, okay, I'm me, but who's my highest self? Who's up there? And who is her highest self? And who is the oversoul? What's her name? What's her energy? What other beings have I been? Who else have I been? Who else am I? All these things, right? Like we start to look externally, and there's nothing invalid with looking externally because we do start to recover pieces of ourselves. Like I've recovered pieces of myself as Thoth and Isis and Sekhmet and all of these beings who are extremely profound, yeah, but important to me, near and dear to my heart. And I would start to see the connections between me and them. And so when we do that, we are recovering pieces of ourself so that it's not invalid to look externally to wonder who you are. But I'm trying to say this like, how can I be as chill as possible while I say this? I'm just going to talk about briefly like my own experience, not that it's the only experience that's ever valid, but a lot of external seeking in my life, and not seeking to fill a hole, but just curiosity, a love of research and remembering and wisdom, and it's who I am and it's what I do, right? It's why I do all of this, why I have this information at hand, is because I've done that searching and that seeking. And what I've begin to understand, and it's what I was talking about in one of the earlier slides, is the deeper into individuation you go, you will find source. Because the deeper into individuation you go of, oh, this person and I was this and I was that and I was this and I was that, and all these different lifetimes and all these different energies, all these different frequencies, you start to understand that all is source. And so sometimes the external energy can be sort of spinning our own wheels. And I say that gently because, like I said, every practice is extremely valid. And we are all doing exactly what we're meant to be doing. But sometimes a lot of external seeking is just spinning our own wheels, and we're going deeper and deeper into individualization and separation. But like I was saying that earlier, there's nothing wrong with that because the deeper and deeper we go, we will find the truth that we are all source. And we often have a very linear perspective of my soul was born, and then I was her, and I was him, and I was over here, and I was over there, and I was doing that. And sometimes that can take power away from us. And so that's why I bring up this topic is not because the external seeking is invalid, it's because sometimes that linear way of thinking, because once again, it's linear. I was born, and then I was this, and then I was that. It is very linear. Because the mind will try to say, oh, I was a priestess in Atlantis 6,500 years ago, and my last lifetime was 8,500 years ago, and so on and so forth. The mind has a very linear way of thinking, and it limits us and traps us in that way. And what I've personally found to be a more expansive practice is to see myself as a direct expression and extension of God's source. So, rather than a piece of God's source, right? That boop was born, a little egg that was hatched into the universe. And she went here and she went there and she did that and she did this. Instead, there's like I think you can tell what I'm saying, right? Is there's a separation in that. That you were born and then you've just been doing this, and that, and you're trying to find your way, back to source, maybe closer to source. A perspective that is far more multidimensional, less linear, which helps you and me expand into a multidimensional feeling and experience and perspective, is that we are a direct extension of source. So I just got a funny visual. But imagine God is the hand and we're like finger puppets on each of the fingers. You know what I'm saying? And so instead of it being a finger that is separated from the hand, right? It's God's source as the hand expanding out through each of us, that we are intrinsically connected. And so you can visualize, like in this practice, right? You can visualize this energy of God's source that extends from God's source through and into you, as you, is you, so on and so forth. And feel this extension of God's source into you and as you and feel that there is a direct connection, that it's not here and there. It just, it's straight from source. It's still connected to the palm of the hand, the palm of source, right? And when you sit with that, it allows it to go deeper. So I want to take a minute and do exactly that. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this practice and to focus on that feeling of God's source. We'll keep it brief, um, and you can go further on your own, okay? Alrighty. Of course, you can pause if you want to go deeper into that now, or you can always come back to it at a later time. Uh, But I think as a final note for this, I think it's this sort of perspective is extremely important because it increases the significance of who we are right now and how we see ourselves. Because a lot of times we can be seeking who we have been instead of seeking who we are now and what we're capable of. And so oftentimes I've witnessed in myself and others this perspective of I am a direct extension of Source is the most powerful and potent way of seeing yourself and knowing what you're capable of. Alrighty. The Emerald activation, the unspoken word. There is a word unspoken, a vibration so pure that it does not exist in language, only in resonance. It is the name of Source before the first breath of creation. This frequency can be accessed in silence, in the stillness between all things. In meditation, attune yourself to the space between sounds, between thoughts, between heartbeats. In this void, the word reveals itself, not as speech, but as a living pulse within you. When you embody it, the illusion of separation dissolves. And so, once again, this is tuning into silence, the significance of silence. And that's why they say that the name of source is not something that can be spoken. It's not a word, and there are words for God and source and all of these things, right? And they're all from written from the perspective of a human because the words we have are the words we have acquired as a human. And sometimes we're acquiring words from different lifetimes, different spaces, and even still we are acquiring those words from the perspective of that energy, of that perspective. So stillness and the void and silence are the energy that is before all else, right? It is silence, stillness, that going within that sitting in silence and stillness and meditation is tuning into the mind of God. And that's why those mandalas come forth of a moment within the mind of God or tuning into the frequency of God is we come to know it not through a word, but through an image, for example and the image is just a representation of a feeling, of a frequency, of an experience. Some people have out-of-body experiences and they explain source experiencing unity consciousness as perfect inky blackness. And that used to terrify me at one point in time, honestly. Um, because a lot of us in the spiritual community, we're all about light, we're all about love. And light and love are extensions of the void. The void is the initial, the initial frequency, the initial energy, the initial core, that which precedes all else. And that's also the 0 point frequency. And so we're to get closer to unity consciousness, we are getting closer to stillness. Rather than doing, we are being. Because if you go back to this space that precedes all, right? There is nothing to do. There is nothing to nowhere to go, nothing to be or become. All is. All that is already is, you know? And it's a lot more about being than doing. And teaching ourselves the frequency of being rather than doing is also very important in life because it increases the frequency and awareness and perspective of presence, of being in the present moment, and reminds us of the importance of just being who we are. It's so much less about what we do and where we go and what we become, and so much more about simply being. And that can be difficult to accept sometimes. As humans, we have these ideas of like purpose. What is my purpose? And one thing to consider, to ask yourself, is do you feel like you need a purpose in order to be worthy of divine love, of divine beauty and light and love and source consciousness? Do you feel like you need to accomplish something to be worthy of this? And that's why I was saying sometimes we accidentally hold limiting beliefs without realizing it. We accidentally hold the limiting belief that we came to Earth to help others and that will aid us in our path, right? As well as aiding others in theirs. But the truth is that we already are. We inherently, innately are. And so this is my speculation, but and I'm jumping ahead once again, but I keep trying to say it, so I'm just going to say it. Um, a lower vibration is a slower vibration. So lower vibrational isn't necessarily inherently bad, right? We have a lot of like linear ways of thinking, again, like a spectrum of good to bad, for example. And a lower vibrational isn't inherently bad. And that's also why my speculation is that the deeper we go into individuation and separation, the denser we go into frequency, we can eventually find stillness within that. That's my speculation, is that at the absolute deepest, lowest frequency, there is stillness, right? Because in theory, if the frequencies are getting slower and slower, then at some point you're going to experience stillness. So that's why I believe that the deeper you go into individuation and separation, the closer you inevitably come to finding source. Like if you were it's like science, where they're always trying to find smaller and smaller particles. And eventually they're finding the quantum field, for example. They're seeing that electrons aren't circling an atom, they're zipping in and out of the quantum field, in and out of our perceived reality. Or, things like the God particle or whatever it may be. It's not, my specialty. So I won't speak on it too much. But it's this idea that the deeper and deeper we go, okay, arm, and then you can go deeper in, skin, and then tissue, and then cell, and then atom, and then electron. And, you can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. Okay, what's deeper than that? What's deeper than that? You're separating the, arm into the hand, into the skin, into the tissue, so on and so forth. That you will eventually zoom in to reach nothing, to reach stillness, to reach the void, to reach God source consciousness. If you zoom in enough, you will find the void. You will find God source consciousness. You will find the original frequency, the original energy that is behind all, that is behind all things. And that's my perspective as well of the quantum field is, God source frequency. The mental fabric of God, so to speak, right? So, yeah, it's a living pulse within you. It's not a word, right? It's not an idea. It's not a concept. It's not a theory. It's not a practice. It is a living pulse. And even frequency isn't necessarily the right word. That's why we use the living pulse as the phrase there. Because it's not even necessarily a frequency. This precedes frequency. This precedes sound. This precedes light. This precedes speech and word. It precedes everything. But this is the living pulse. It's what keeps your heartbeat going, but it's also the silence in between the heartbeats. It's the inhale and the exhale, the full lung and the empty lung. It is both. It is all. All right. And so this is another way of accessing unity consciousness is by going into the silence within through meditation. So one of the great mysteries of existence is that the deeper one enters into the labyrinth of material complexity, the closer one comes to the realization that there is never separation at all. And this is the law of divine inversion. And once again, it's not inversion in the same sense we understand. It's not linear. Where the furthest point from source loops back into unity. And once again, that's the Ouroboros. I told you I was trying to jump ahead on the earlier slides. So yeah, the more you zoom in, you will see the God source behind and within all. The fractal nature, if you zoom in past You can keep zooming out and out. You can zoom out from me and see the state I live in, the country I live in, the planet I live on, the solar system, the galaxy I live in, so on and so forth, right? And you can keep zooming out, but you can also keep zooming in, and you will see a different separation, individuation of source, no matter how far in or how far out you zoom. It all is one. So the fractal nature of reality, the many contained in the one. So reality unfolds in fractals, each part containing the whole in miniature. As existence expands outwards into increasing layers of differentiation, it simultaneously encodes the entire cosmic blueprint within each fragment. This means that as creation becomes more complex, it does not move away from unity. It actually holds more reflections of it within. Sort of like I always like envision it as like a funhouse funhouse mirror. Like a when you go to the fair and you go through the room with all the mirrors. It's sort of like that, right? It's just one you who is going through that hall of mirrors, and yet there will be infinite reflections of you because there's the initial reflection of you in the mirrors, and then there's a reflection of your reflection in the mirrors, and it's infinite, right? But it's all just, isn't it so beautiful? Isn't it so profound? It's all that one. It's all that original being. Sorry. It's all that one original being. And we are all just reflections of it. And that's the nature of fractals is when you zoom in, the same pattern will repeat itself over and over and over again. And you'll zoom in on something that appears to be different, but when you zoom in, it's the same pattern over and over and over again. And it's the same thing of each part containing the whole in miniature. And that's another profound perspective to have, is we're not just a piece of the puzzle, you know, we are a reflection of the entire puzzle in one human being. And we tend to have our own different specialties and individuations, and yet beyond all of that, because again, individuations are just part of the fractal, right? Someone appears to be different. And yet, the closer you get, the more you zoom in, we're all the same. We're all the same. We are all one. And so the entire cosmic blueprint is encoded within you, within me, within this cup that you can't see. No, within the flowers that are next to me, within the walls that surround me, all the people and places and animals that I see and go to, right? All contains the entire cosmic blueprint. And so as it's becoming more complex, we're not moving away from unity. It is just holding more reflections of the original within it. It's like we are the mirrors or the reflections in the mirrors of God's source. And so another perspective is to imagine a drop of water taken from the ocean. At first glance, it seems separate, right? You wouldn't call that drop of water the ocean. It seems separate and an individual, it seems like an individual expression, right? But when you examine it deeply enough, magnify it to its essence, you will find it contains the same patterns, elements, and principles that exist within the entire ocean. Like if you take two different drops of water from the same place in the ocean, they'll have a similar saline content. They'll have, the similar atomic structure, whatever it may be, right? And so if the ocean is this atomic structure, this level of salt to water ratio, and sometimes it's also holding specific frequencies, that goes more into the science of and studies of water, but holding certain frequencies or certain patterns. Like, does the energy of the water remain the same when it's separated from its source, right? So, even though the individual drop of water, you wouldn't necessarily consider that to be the ocean, it is a reflection of the whole. It is the entire codex of the ocean, so to speak, held within a singular drop. And it's a culmination of drops that creates the ocean as well, right? And so, like above, so below, as above, so below, where it's the microcosm is the same as the macrocosm. The illusion of separation dissolves in totality. As consciousness individuates, it takes on layers of identity, self-awareness, and distinction. This creates the perception of I and other. right? So yet when complexity reaches its apex, when one perceives the fullness of differentiation, it becomes clear that all aspects are interconnected, forming a single unified field. So think of a vast neural network. A single neuron in isolation may seem separate, but the more neurons that connect, the more complex the system becomes until eventually the network reaches a threshold where all individual parts function as a unified intelligence. The system as a whole becomes self-aware when the pieces connect, right? Humanity, nature, the cosmos, they are all engaged in this process. The more individuated and complex the system, the more intricate the web of interconnection, until at a certain level of awareness, the entire web is recognized as a single living entity. All right, let me see. I'm trying to remember if I had anything else I want to say about this, honestly. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, this is another way of me just explaining of us, just explaining 'cause it's not just me. Um, like the same water drop in the ocean sort of perspective is we may seem isolated, but when we connect the entire system, we see the unified whole, the unified intelligence. I'm just gonna leave that there, honestly. Like I said, I kind of skipped ahead with my explanations. So, matter as condensed light, the return to source. Material reality is not separate from source, it is source slowed down, condensed into form. This is also where I skipped ahead. Condensed into form. The deeper one explores matter, the more one finds unity within its foundations. At the macro level, the universe appears vast and separate planets, stars, galaxies, all moving through space. At the micro level, all things are made of the same quantum field, vibrating energy that is intrinsically connected. At the zero point, which I've gone into in other meditations, all distinctions collapse. And this is the void. This is the inky black darkness. This is the unity consciousness, the zero point. Almost like the zero dimension. There's zero-ith. I don't know what you would add to that. The zero dimension. All distinctions collapse. There is only the singularity, the infinite potential from which all arises. Thus, when consciousness penetrates the deepest levels of material existence, whether through science, mysticism, or direct experience, it encounters the truth that there is no separation at all. And that's the going, the zooming in and in and in and in until you find the underlying nature of all of reality until you find God's source frequency that connects all of us, that creates all of us, that is all of us, right? And that's that zero point frequency is the void, the darkness, the singularity that precedes everything. Like in the Big Bang, for example, it's the singularity that burst forth into the all. Alrighty, we are almost done. The Ouroboros of creation. So this is why the path back to unity is an inversion. As creation spirals outward into complexity through the fractal pattern, it seems to move away from its source, right? But in reality, the further it expands, the closer it comes to recognizing its own wholeness. This is the Ouroboros, the cosmic serpent swallowing its own tail, the completion of the cycle where the end is the beginning. Crazy, right? So the master's realization, a master does not seek to escape material reality, but to see through it, to recognize it as the divine expressing itself in infinite form, to dissolve the illusion of separation within the physical, not beyond it. This is why ascension is not a flight from matter, but a revelation through it. The deeper into material complexity we go, the more reflections of unity we find, until ultimately we see that there is never fragmentation at all. And so that's why I was saying a lot of us can accidentally or not hold the frequency that, we just need to get away from Earth or we just need to buckle down and get through it and, look forward to what's on the other side. But those mystery school teachings are all about taking back the power of why we came here, why we do anything, who we are, why we are, so on and so forth. Because a lot of us have these spiritual practices like manifestation, which is just a microcosm to the macrocosm of divine creation. meditation, yoga, all of these things. And we are often disconnected from the divine why behind them. And that's these mystery school teachings, is to re-empower ourselves by reconnecting us to the why, to the divine truth behind all. Alrighty, so I think I'm gonna leave it there. I'm going to while I was recording this, um, I was hearing from a source that I need to make this available to everyone. So I'm going to be releasing this on my Patreon. You might be seeing it on my Patreon. Hello. And also going to be releasing this on YouTube. So hello from YouTube as well. I'm going to be releasing a Unity Consciousness meditation on my YouTube channel to pair with this, probably tomorrow. Probably tomorrow. Been a bit busy recently, so I've been behind on my scheduling, but probably tomorrow. And we'll go a bit deeper with this, okay? All right, so much love to all of you. Thank you for coming, and I'm wishing you the best. Please let me know if you have any questions about this, if you want me to go deeper into this. I mean, I will be, you know. But okay, bye. I'm still recording.